Today we play golf.
Let me show you how we do it in the pros.
Welcome to Behind the Golf Brand Podcast.
I never miss with the 7-iron.
A conversation with some of the most interesting innovators and entrepreneurs behind the biggest names in golf.
My friends with the golf clubs. I lived on the golf course. I lived on the driving range.
From pro talk.
You should learn something from each and every single round you play in.
To fun from on and off the green.
Why would you play golf if you don't play it for money?
Just let me put the ball in the hole.
This is Behind the Golf Brand Podcast with Paul Liberatore. Behind the Golf Brand Podcast is sponsored by On Point, the revolutionary three-dimensional domed golf ball marker. On Point provides alignment recognition as small as a degree of inaccuracy from the planned course of the putt face angle. Endorsed by Jim Furyk, U.S. Open champion and 17-time PGA Tour winner. On Point alignment technology has been proven to increase putting performance and help lower your score. Visit onpointgolf.us and be sure to use code GA10 for a 10% discount. On Point, make more putts.
What's up, guys? Paul from Golfers Authority. Welcome to the Behind the Golf Brand Podcast. This week, I have my good friend Bryan Finnerty from V1 Sports. A lot of you guys already know what V1 Sports is because you use it in your daily regimens or with your training or just because you're trying to get better at golf. So it's really kind of exciting to hear about how he started the brand, where they're going, and kind of just his story because, he's a soccer player that went into golf, like a real soccer player, not like a crappy one. So welcome to the show.
I think you should be my agent, man. When I was negotiating contracts back in my 30s, it should have been, he's a good soccer player, not a crappy one. I mean,
I would have been your agent. I would be
That's right.
Agent.
You could have.
I really could have, honestly.
Yeah.
I went to high school with this guy who's a lawyer too, and he's an agent, but he does football players, stuff like that. But I'm not that douchey. Does that make sense? They think they're so cool and real. I'm just not that guy. Let's just brass tacks. What's the deal? No, we're not doing that deal. Let's make some sense. That's what we kind of do with my law practice. We represent some very big sports companies, even though we're a small firm, and we're doing deals with the Yankees and the, MLB and NBA and NBA, Europe and all this crap like that. And it's funny because you can figure out which teams are kind of jerk, we're the so-and-sos. And I'm like, I don't care. You want my stuff. So,
yeah.
So we're going to play a game today. It's called Wayback Machine. So what's your first golf memory?
First golf memory, having a sand wedge in my hand, in probably 6th or 7th grade down at the beach. I grew up in Dana Point, California, near the beach or at the beach basically. And, we come in from surfing, bonfire, throw the Frisbee, play beach volleyball, and somebody brought a sand wedge down. And so we throw the Frisbee out and try to hit golf balls to the Frisbee. And that was kind of my first introduction to what golf was. And as you'd imagine, if your first time is trying to hit a golf ball off the sand, it was pretty funny, but it was interesting. And then our local golf course had a deal. If you picked up range balls for a half hour, you got to play for $1.50. I'm 53, cool. So I can $1.50 back then actually meant something. It wasn't a rounding error. And so to play for $1.50 for the whole week, if you just picked up range balls for a half hour.
The whole week?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
You go anytime.
Like one round.
$1.50. No, anytime during the week. They gave you a little card and you're basically one of their staff guys. And I love picking up range balls because I would just take a wedge with me and then, hit them back against the fence and then just pick them all up, made it really easy. So my memories were just kind of hacking it around and then, playing with buddies and having fun.
So you grew up in San Diego, essentially.
Yeah.
San Diego County in the 80s, right? So
yep.
But that was a fun time.
It did not suck. That's for sure.
I watched Karate Kid. There's a beach scene in there. I know it was like.
Yeah, and then I got the good opportunity to go to San Diego State, so the journey continued.
The really good school, but it's also party schools too, isn't it? Kind of.
Yeah, it certainly was ranking right up there. I think it was
ASU. ASU's number one.
Well, ASU, I'm not sure there was much of a rival, but San Diego State San Diego State and UC Santa Barbara were giving it a good run during the 80s for sure.
Really, UCSB was? I never knew that. I thought it was
man.
Well, I used to be a pilot before I became a lawyer, and we used to fly into the airport up there in Santa Barbara, and that's right on the campus, right? The airport is, and then it's airport ocean campus. It's all right there. It's so weird.
Super fun. I remember flying in there. I'm a pilot as well, and
really,
it's foggy half the days there. It could get you could leave LA on a beautiful day and get to Santa Barbara and be, if you're not IFR certified,
like pea soup.
Yeah.
Well, I just remember like flying in there and thinking, oh man, I picked the wrong college. Like I should have just gone to like use like. I remember as a girl at the high school that went to UCSB, and I was like, "What's UCSB?" And then when I like 5 years later, I'm like, "Oh, this is UCSB." Which I knew about this when I was in high school. So I would have.
I know.
Like I went to Purdue, so there's nothing out there but like cornfields, and that's about it. I didn't know.
Well, you're back on the West Coast now, so that's good.
I couldn't even stand there much longer. I was like, I gotta get out of here. So you grew up in San Diego, and then you became a soccer star, right? Like, did you get a full ride to San Diego State?
No, I was a walk-on. I was a fourth string goalkeeper. I was recruited to go to James Madison University. And for a kid who grew up in California, to take a recruiting trip in the middle of November, it was the week before Thanksgiving. They had already had a snow. All the girls were in long winter coats. And I got on campus. I was literally like, what am I doing? A great soccer program, by the way. And I'm like, what am I doing here? Got home, told my parents, I'm going to just go to our local, San Diego State University. I think it was $850 back then for tuition. It cost more for books and for lodging. And I was a walk-on. I was fourth string goalie, redshirted my freshman year, third string my sophomore year, which was my freshman year of eligibility. And the next year I was still third string, which is basically like you're carrying water, placing cones on the ground for the coaching staff. Starting goalkeeper broke his leg in the middle of the year. The next goalie came in during that game and literally was thrown up in the back of the net, nervous as hell. Lasted like 7 minutes in the game. The coach was like, "Hey, Finnerty, like, just go mop this up. You're in." And we ended up making a run. We won all the last of our games through the end of the season. Lost to UCLA the last game, but then made the NCAA tournament. Ended up playing in the final against Clemson that year, which was 1987, and played every game after that since. And then got lucky enough to get drafted by San Diego, of all places. And then 2 weeks later, I got traded to Detroit, and kind of the rest is history. I played 10 years here in Detroit. My last year was in New York. But my wife and I kept our house here in Detroit, and we just settled in Michigan. But yeah,
did you fall in love with Michigan? Because I mean, you're a West Coast beach boy, so like,
yeah, I'm a surfer. There? Yeah, but I grew up working on fishing boats, and I loved fly fishing when I was a kid. My grandfather really introduced me to fishing in general, but fly fishing was pretty cool. Michigan outdoors is awesome, and with my family and my wife's family still on the West Coast, I get to go home and go surfing. Not as much as I'd like, but the Midwest values and people are fantastic. It's just a great place to raise a family. I can't say enough about it. And playing 10 years here, Detroit, there's a lot of old wives' tales about how much Detroit embraced their sports athletes or sports guys. And when we came back to Michigan and opened up our sports facility in the year 2001, same year my twin boys were born, we were full the moment we opened up the facility. And I think a lot of that was I had the good fortune of playing a decade here. And they really supported, like, hey, if you're going to stay in Michigan, we're going to support you as a community, especially in soccer. So yeah, it was like a match made in heaven. And 30 years later, I'm still here. So it's great. Yeah.
So I want to live in San Diego. I'd do anything to live in San Diego. So.
Yeah, I get that. We now get back to know my twin boys are in college. My wife and I are empty nesters. So for the second year in a row, we've gone to Encinitas and La Jolla, January, February, and March, which is a perfect time to get out of Michigan because there's a lot of white stuff on the ground that's not sand. So it's good to get back for sure.
So after you played Major League Soccer, then you opened up your facility. Was it an indoor like soccer facility, or what was it?
Yeah, it's about a 200,000 square foot indoor, mostly soccer, but we have 4 basketball, 4 volleyball courts, field hockey, like hard court that also doubles as futsal, 3 indoor soccer fields, a full size soccer field under roof. So 77,000 square feet. Like if you can imagine, obviously a soccer field's a little bigger than the football field. That's a fully covered space that we can play in year round. So it's a big endeavor. Full sports bar inside. Got 2 golf simulators. We do NFL combines there. I mean, it's 20 years later. It is. Oh yeah. Crap. Like I can tell you, it's not anything someone's going to build and retire on, but every day that I get a chance to go in there, and I'm only there 1 or 2 days a week these days. I mean, our staff does a fantastic job running it. They probably say it runs better when I'm not there. But, from the kids laughing and having a great time to the parents that are just excited to get their kids active, to the adults that are your my age that are running around still playing soccer or flag football or, playing softball there. I just think it's cool. It's just a lot of fun. There's just energy and excitement.
Like that was your idea, right? You built it.
Yeah, ground up.
Oh my God.
But we had
square footage, dude.
Yeah, I had 11 years traveling around the world on somebody else's dime, looking at indoor and outdoor sports facilities. So after those 11 years, you have a really good idea of what works and what doesn't. And so I bought a complex that has 12 baseball diamonds. I sold the front acreage to a group that put in an ice hockey facility. And then I built my facility. So I wouldn't say I was going in blind. Yeah. I would land in whatever city we're in. I had this affection to check it out. Yeah.
That's so smart. So you're already trying to do your investments back then because you're like, all right, I'm going to buy the land. I'm going to sell the front. I'm going to probably get a bunch of cash on that, which will help pay for the back. I know. Yeah, I know.
You know, that was when my boys asked me, Dad, did you really use anything you went to college for? I'd say, life lessons for sure. But I was sports marketing with a real estate minor. I'm a math guy by nature. So I only had 2 extra classes to take to clean up a finance degree, which I could apply towards real estate. And I will say that was a really, really important choice for me because understanding the power of real estate and how it works against debt. The old adage is that's where a lot of the sort of wealth in generational wealth gets created, but it's true. And so when you do understand how real estate works and how you can leverage, I got to sell 10 acres to pay for 75 of them. So it works pretty good that way.
Yeah, I used to do the same thing out here. Like I'd buy 40 acres. And then in Arizona, what you do is called a 5 split. And so like if you did 6 or more, it's subdivision, you get a public report, right? So if you did a 5 split, you would just cut it into 5 pieces and you have to do a public report. It's not a subdivision. And what you end up doing is selling the first. And then here's a little math for you guys. This is easy math. So then what you do is you sell like the first 2 acres in the front, or however many acres it is, 5 acres or 10 acres, whatever in the front. And that will pretty much pay for the other 3 in the back. And it costs you literally nothing to do that because then you're like, now you own 20 acres in the back, essentially, or more with no debt. Right. Yep. And then you also built comps by selling the 2 out front. So now it's like, instead of being 2,000 an acre, it's 10,000 an acre. And you literally just created your own market. And then that's the. But then what happened was the Great Recession, and that wasn't a good idea anymore.
Yep. You had to make sure you had a little cash in the bank to cover that debt.
Yeah. I mean, but that was fine. But like, I know a lot of people, spent all their, lost everything. I mean, because they got too spread thin, but so then
I'm sitting in a 120,000 square foot Class A office space that we bought in 2009 for that exact reason. The guys were
bought it in 9, so it already crashed. So it had
already bottomed out and it went into foreclosure. One of my old companies, we had 14,000 square feet here. And literally one of my good friends who used to play for the Detroit Lions called me and said, hey, your place just went up on auction.com where you're paying rent. Like what? It was valued at 13.5 and it went on auction for 4.5. So my business partner and I are like, we're already paying ourselves rent. And we know 3/4 of the tenants in the building who aren't going anywhere. So we got some signed agreements from them, went to the bank, at least got the top end of what we could do.
Cool.
And bought it off auction.com. Crazy.
See, real estate, you don't have to go to college. All right. I'm gonna open it up. You don't have to go to college, kids. I tell my kids that. I'm like, you should go to college if it's like if you want to, that's cool. If you want to take a year off after high school and try to figure out what you want to do, that's cool too, as long as you're not like doing anything. But I feel like I learned more of my life after college than I did in the 4 years I was in college.
Yeah, we're gaining all this knowledge and then we're not old enough to do anything with it. So.
Well, you think you're going to go on a path, right? Like you go to college for a path. You think, I'm going to do X because I went to school to do X. Guess what? You never wanted to do X. You just found a major or something, and then the next thing you know, you're doing 30 years of that X job. That's not even what you're good at or you even like. I don't know. That's what I think. But
agreed.
So then what was the next endeavor you did? You did the cell phone company. Or the insurance. How'd you get into that? That's like so random.
It was totally random. So opened up High Velocity in 2001. By 2003, we were fully profitable, which back then, no sports facilities are profitable. They were basically glorified YMCAs that needed some funding to stay alive, help from their cities. I just changed it to be, and you'll appreciate this, we just treat it like a sports mall. So we had each of our managers managing a certain square footage in the building, whether it was turf, hard court, the bar, golf simulators, and each of them had to run their own P&L. And I know that sounds absolutely like no crap simple, but sports facilities just weren't run like that. So I ran it all on the revenue per square foot model. In 2 years, we were profitable. And as you can imagine, other people that own sports facilities started to knock on the door, literally, hey, can I come in and tour it? Because you guys must have built the newest mousetrap. And I'm like, we built the same sports facility that's in Edmonton, Seattle, Tulsa, New York. It's not that much different, but we just run it different. So fast forward, started doing some consulting in that world. And then opened up a company called Sports Facilities Advisory. sold that, opened it in 2003, sold it in 2008. I still sit on the board of directors with them. I think they're managing $3 billion worth of projects right now, doing 300 million a year. Those guys are absolutely crushing it. They build for like countries' Olympic committees, those types of facilities. So they've certainly grown it. So I'd love staying involved in that. And then a good friend of mine who, through real estate, I would buy these 4 and 6 unit strip malls. He would always put a cell phone store. Back then, it might have been pagers and cell phones, right? To date it a little bit. But as one of the anchor tenants, and then we'd easily fill up the rest of the locations. He called me and said, hey, I've got 45 cell phone locations now, and we're selling our own insurance. Knowing that I was a math guy, he said, can you just run some math on it and tell me, how do I grow it? As you'd imagine, I ran a little actuarial table on like the money you're collecting versus the number of phones that when someone loses or breaks it, you got to fulfill. I said, in 11 months, you're going to be bankrupt. Like all your stores are going to be bankrupt. You can't just hand somebody a brand new iPhone. No, I was like, stop. But the problem was he was handing someone a brand new cell phone if they walked in and filled out a police report, which is just the wrong way to do it. So I helped them rejigger that. He's like, hey, why don't we just be 50-50 partners? Like, most dumb deals start like, hey, let's shake hands on it. We'll be partners. And I can tell you it worked out great. We were partners. We grew from 3 employees in 2008 to 125 employees by 2012, doing $125 million, 6,000 locations around the planet. It was a meteoric rise. We ended up getting bought out in 2012 and then again in 2015 by a publicly traded insurance company. And as you and I were talking prior to the podcast,
was it Asurion?
Yep, Asurion was our competitor.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And so they basically were trying to squash us. And Fortegra, the insurance company, bought us to say, hey, we want to go toe to toe with them. And we literally couldn't do it. We were growing and pouring every dime back into the company as fast as we could. And Fortegra was a $4 billion company. So it was easy for them to compete.
Who owns Asurion though? Is it like Allstate or somebody? I thought somebody owns it.
No, it's actually a private, they made today, but it was a privately held group of 3 guys who owned a bunch of, believe it or not, tow truck companies. And they understood the value of sort
the same
of pre-selling.
Math, right? Yeah. It's like now it's cars.
They just knew the math.
It's just a different product.
So yeah, got out of that, decided no more working with a-holes in industries I don't like. I knew I always
really know nothing about,
tech.
like, because you don't care about it.
I was literally, my job was to build culture in the company and to build vision for where we were going. My business partner, who came from the cell phone world, was the industry guy. So we were a perfect partnership. It was just like, hey, Bryan, you stay internally and grow the company. I'm going to go outside and forge all of our relationships. It was a match made in heaven. It was absolutely perfect for us. So yeah, sold that. That was in 15 was the final bite of that apple. Took a year off and then bought V1, right, which is where I sit today. Also acquired a golf clothing company called Galway Bay, among a few other investments. And just kind of rolled all that forward. And V1 at the time was it.
So like you sold it in 15, you took a year off because you're like, what am I going to do next, right? Because you're working so hard, and then you're like, your kids are getting older, and they're probably like, I'm going to really
I wanted to coach them, and my wife and I started a foundation with the sale of that company of ProtectCELL. So I ran the foundation for a year, which is really focused on alleviating the pay-to-play sports conundrum as we saw it in the country. And then as you really dive into that, you see this when your kids playing lacrosse and baseball and all the other sports. Pay to play is everywhere around the planet, right? For the most part. And so we said, well, we're not going to address it at the national level. Let's at least look at the region. And you start whittling it down. Literally, we ended up not even to the county in Michigan. We went to our city. We're in the 4th wealthiest county in the state of Michigan. And almost 20% of our kids are on the free lunch program. So when you start to look at that, you go, I don't have to go to Detroit. Detroit has its own issues there too. Just like, you could go into Phoenix and that you can go into Scottsdale. As much as everybody thinks Scottsdale is wealthy everywhere, there are areas that it's not. And we started to realize if kids couldn't afford to pay for lunch, they definitely weren't paying for sports. So we started partnering with schools to help address that issue. I was scholarshiping kids. The whole year I took off, I was putting the money in the wrong places, which was feeding the organizations. Totally wrong plan as we found it. The root cause is actually happening at the school level, where these kids are there every day wanting to play sport every day. And we started having a big impact. So my wife said, look, why don't you go, since the foundation's dwindling down, we don't take outside funds from other people. We don't want to be a fundraising company. Why don't you go back and invest and build small to medium-sized companies? That's what you do great. And as those companies grow and sell, we'll take 100% of our percentage of proceeds and put it back in the foundation. So I get to go to work every day and love what I do. As these companies grow and sell or throw off cash, we just repopulate the foundation. My wife runs the foundation, and
it's tax deductible too.
It's perfect, right? It's a
That's really
perfect
cool.
situation. Yeah.
So
yeah, we get to serve a lot of people in the community with
that's really
using our talents, right? Versus, hey, will you write me a check? And will you write me a check? Again, building high performing teams is what I do. And to be able to do it in golf is like, it's a dream come true. It was freaking greatest job in the world.
So then how did V1, like, how did you get into that?
V1 is a local to Michigan company. So they're based in Plymouth. I had worked with V1 back in 2000. So at the time, they were a 17 or 18-year-old company, founded by Chris Hart many, many, many years ago. And they had approached me during my playing days, the end of my playing career, and said, hey, we want to use V1, which is back then only video technology for golf. And we want to do soccer. But we found out that because soccer is such a moving game versus baseball and golf are obviously very static, soccer was just going to be a different animal. But I did get to know those guys indirectly. And then all these years later, I heard they were looking for an investor to grow the company. So it's like, hey, myself and Bob Paul, who was the ex-CEO of CompuWare, were good friends. We were looking for something in sports tech. We thought this is perfect. We can go kind of sit next to the founder and help him grow the company. Once we got in there, we kind of realized that Chris had a different vision for where he wanted to take the company, which was kind of building it and sunsetting it. And we just thought there was a lot of life left. I mean, it was a great brand, 17,000 golf pros, 70% market share, a really strong brand in the industry that does serve a ton of playing pros and almost 4 million consumers. At the time, about 2 million. So we built a buyout plan for Chris. That way,
you're like, you should really sunset this, dude. Like, you got something really special here.
That was it. And so he didn't see it that way. And so I was like, hey, if you want to keep taking it that way, let's go. So I wrote up a job description for our new CEO. And the board of directors said, that kind of sounds like you. Why don't? And I said, all right, I didn't step back fast enough, right? I'll step in for like 3 months. And 3.5 years later, 3.5 years later, I'm here and holding on to the vine. We just completed a $3 million fundraise. Probably in the next 30 days, we'll announce who the lead investor was in that group. But I'll suffice it to say, a very, very iconic person in the world of basketball that has a deep passion for golf. So
really,
it's going to be, awesome. It's going to be really an exciting new trajectory for us as a company.
I know that is. Will that same person own a golf course? Possibly. I can't say anything.
I don't know. I don't know.
I know a couple.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
that's badass. Actually,
so great. Yeah, it's just great. I mean, you can sense my enthusiasm, right? It's just great to be fun,
here. Right? If
That's
you're talking about cell phone insurance, I could tell like you're like, I don't know. Like, yeah, I made some good money. It was all right. It's like I saw my best friend this weekend, right? He had to move from Arizona to St. Louis, and he got a really good job, right? Really promoted him. He's making crazy money, but he's just like, this sucks. Like, I'm like, yeah, money doesn't always solve the problem, dude. It just makes it like harder to not do something else. Right.
That's right. So yeah, V1's been great, man. It's been a lot of fun and a lot coming, which is good.
It's kind of interesting, dude. Like this thing we were talking about, how he's thinking about sunsetting at the time, because he's been in for 16 years. It's like, well, how am I going to get out of this? Probably. Right. And then, you come along, you're like, hey, we could buy you out. And he's probably like, over time, he's like, oh, that'd be awesome. Thanks. So
and keep him involved. Yeah. So he still has shares in the company. It's like, hey, we'd love for you to be around because only a few guys know where all the bodies are buried in this company, and you got to make sure that you know where they are. Our director of technology, Mike Mester, who's literally, this was his first job out of college when he was 18. He's almost 40 now. So it's great having these guys with some legacy in the company, and Chris being one of them. So it's good having him around. At the same time, we had, I think, 23 people in the company when I took over, went down to 11. In the spirit of getting the right people on the bus, and now we're getting them the right seats. Oddly enough, we had the most profitable year in the company history when we shrunk the company in half. And now we're up to 30 plus employees, just cranking. And so, but we have the right people on the team, and that's, you got to believe in where we're going. And if you don't have the passion for that, quite frankly, it probably sucks working here, or anywhere, right? If you don't love what you're doing, then kind of why do it? And we spent a lot of time there, right? For me, it was, I'm going to cast a vision of where we're going, and it is going to be fast and furious. We are going to break some things. We're going to fire some clients. We're going to get in and clean some house. And it's been an awesome journey. It's been really cool.
That's freaking crazy. So then is the golf portion of the app more popular than the baseball or vice versa?
Golf for sure, right? I mean, we've got 20 some years history in the golf industry, huge market share there. And, not resting on those laurels, but we'd say we earned our badge of that brand because we've serviced it for so long in golf. The good news about baseball is, and I think I could say this if there were a bunch of baseball people here, they're probably 5 to 7, maybe 8 years behind in technology of where golf is. Not that golf is the absolute end all be all in the forward spot, but golf has quite frankly used technology for well over 2 decades, even longer. Baseball is just getting there. So if you look at pressure technology, video AI technology, we see it, right? Exit velocity, we're hearing a lot about now. Exit angles, we're hearing a lot. 10 years ago, if you talk to somebody about exit velocity of a baseball or the launch angle of baseball, people will tell you, like, hey, stop swinging for the fences. Well, guess what? How is Major League Baseball played right now? Big hits, because they're learning how to do that. That's all through technology. It's not an accident. It isn't anecdotal. It's technology. So we think as we talk to groups like the Pittsburgh Pirates, Detroit Tigers, et cetera, that are using our technology, we're basically saying we've done it for over 2 decades in golf, so you can trust us. We're not some brand new company that theoretically thinks,
right? Like we don't have an idea.
No, we're coming to you, telling, yeah. When Tiger Woods gets on in his first tournament and says, "Hey, how'd you do it? You're a young kid, He's like, "I use V1 technology, like all my young guys do." Well, we didn't have to pay for that. That was something that inherently he was saying, "This is how I get better." And oddly enough, baseball's at that precipice right now, and so for us, we get to leverage it, which is leverage the brand and the technology. It's been fantastic and really cool.
So, when the pro buys the V1, right? Which I think is really cool because it's an app, right? I bet you back in the day you had to buy software and go on your computer, blah, 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 blah. Even 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, by having just an app, and I mean, because you can put it on your iPad, they can put it on their phone, right? Android, I'm assuming too, right? Like anything really. It's like a tool that pretty much tells you everything you need to know about what you're doing. Swing, right? Because there's a video capture, but you can draw all over it. Be like, hey, this is this is what's wrong, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the good thing is we've sort of repositioned the company to say, let us meet you where you're at, whether you're a golfer or a golf pro or a baseball player, baseball academy instructor. Let us meet you where you're at. And if I talk to somebody in Arizona, they're going to say, I don't teach inside of 4 walls, or especially in San Diego. Like I'm out on a range, maybe under a tent. Well, if I go to Oakland Hills or Seminole or Coyote Club, we've got a lot of big breakers. Claude Harmon's got a full 7-bay studio with 4 to 6 cameras in each bay. That's how he teaches, which is awesome. But you might run into a guy like Steve Cox at the Grand who says, I just want to use my phone or my iPad. Perfect. We have that too. So we kind of have a system that fits from 6 or 8 cameras at a full on teaching bay, right? Where you come in, to a guy or gal who's, to your point, using a phone or an Android device or an iPad and saying, let me just record your swing here. I'll do a voiceover. I'm going to attach 3 tips and drills, and you take it how you use it. It's like, awesome. We also have V1 Game, which allows them to capture data on the golf course about how they're playing, which is, I think, really super important. And that can all go back to the golf coach via V1 Coach. So
I think it's really cool too, because even if you're a new instructor, right? Like if you're a new guy coming up, school, and you're trying to build a business, you can't go out and buy all this crap, right? Like if you're a brand new guy, you can't buy bays, you can't buy cameras, you can't buy all this stuff. So all you have to really do is take your phone, like if you're new, and take your phone or your iPad or whatever, and literally have the same technology right there in your hand.
That's exactly right.
For a fraction of the price, right? A small fraction. At least you're on the same playing grounds to try to really especially if you're trained that way as well, like it works. Then it makes it that much easier for you to grow a company, right? Your own little brand or whatever it might be.
Yeah, we like to say to the new pros, at the end of the day, let's just give you some math, right? I'm a math guy, so I definitely lean in that direction. But almost 70% of people across the course of time and history and human nature are visual learners. So if you're not a visual learner, what we are saying is just pay attention to math. 70% of your students are visual learners. So first and foremost, whether you use V1 or not, you need to give the majority of your people something to look at in order to start the conversation about getting better. For the other 30%, it might be tactile or auditory. It doesn't mean visual doesn't matter. It just means you're going to have to augment some of that training. So our job is to give you more time in the day and a more seamless way to do your business. Again, you just tell us how you want to do it. Are you brand new? Or are you a guy who's been teaching for 25 years who wants to go to more lacrosse and baseball games, and you're tired of leaning on a 7-iron from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or missing revenue if you get a full day of rain like we're going to have tomorrow in Michigan? Why don't you do
and
online
also
lessons?
too, like a lot of guys don't just stay at one place to teach, right? Like
Absolutely, a lot of guys move.
You don't know that. Like, I didn't know that. My instructor was we coached Little League together, and I know he's a golf pro. Like he told me, he's like, yeah, you just rent. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I rent here, I rent there, and I keep the whole facility. It's almost like I work there. If I don't, I just pay them a small rent, like a really cheap.
That's right.
I'm like, that's how that works. I never knew that. And so like if you're portable and you're going from point A to point B, and the other thing too, like you could even teach somebody at a park, right? I mean, if you really want, or your house, or indoor facility, or whatever.
We've got an instructor out of Santa Monica that does almost $200,000 a year teaching students in China and Japan that he's never met, making over $200,000 doing nothing but online lessons with people that he's never met. So to your point, you could do it at a park. You could actually be doing lessons in your basement or in your office at home, just using the technology of they capture a swing on V1 Golf, they send it to you, you use our system, Telestration, attach tips and drills, send it back to them. Oh, you're going to go play golf? Assign me as your coach, capture all your data. So now I know, you know what? Hey, Paul, you're missing like 75% of your fairways to the right. And unless you're massively lined up wrong every time, my guess is you're working with a little bit of a slice if you're a right-hand golfer. Yeah, actually I am. Guess what we're going to work on the next time you show up to the range? Working on your slice. We're not going to work on hitting your driver further or how to chip better. We got to get the dispersion down first. I'm just picking that as one thing. But if you rolled up to the tee box,
thanks a lot, man.
Never. But we do know that if we remove the emotion of that, right? So if you walk up to the lesson tee and your pro had all that data, if your last tee ball was blown out of bounds to the right, or let's say worse, it was to the left, you pull hooked it, double crossed it. If you tell the instructor, hey, I want to work on my driver because I'm double crossing everything. We hear that all the time. In reality, it was one shot. It just pissed you off. You lost the bets. Like it's a sore subject. But when he looks at the data and says, it's really not the problem. If we correct the slice, you're also going to get rid of the pull hooks. Now we got the driver going in the right direction. Let's just focus on that versus the other stuff. Okay, takes the emotion out of it, right? And the learning light comes on faster when we remove emotion. We know that through psychology. So anyway, that could be a whole nother
like, I don't know, dude, I like you. You're like a jack of all trades. I didn't know any. So here's the thing, like everyone, a lot of people I work with, they're like, oh yeah, you should interview so-and-so, you should interview so-and-so, right? And like, we're friends with the same people, you and I. So they're like, I should interview you, it'd be really cool. I'm like, all right, cool. I don't do a lot of research on people because I feel it's really fake. You know what I mean? I mean, I know
I hear you.
Or stuff like that, but like, I don't want to know these things about you because like, I want this to be a real conversation. Right. And it's really cool because like, I mean, if you can impress me during the interview, that's always a good thing. Because I'm like, well, this guy's like, there's only a couple people that actually blow my mind before. And I was like, oh man, like you're at a whole other level. And I love seeing that. That's why I love doing this show because it's like, I love hearing how you actually do it. Right. Because what happens is like, I try to tell my kids this, either you're an entrepreneur or you're not. Like it doesn't just happen. Right. Like it's kind of like you got to have like this weird drive inside of you to like figure stuff out. Right. And so, I mean, that's very fascinating.
Yeah. And I think as people go, I mean, I'll talk about this whole, speaking of business school thing, there is this belief that you can teach entrepreneurism. I'm not saying that isn't possible, but I do call bullshit on that.
That's complete bullshit, dude. How would you teach that? Like,
right. So there's a gene, there's DNA that says I have the ability to discern risk differently, right? And my appetite for it is different. But you've probably known a bunch through your legal practice of guys who ultimately go bankrupt because they don't have a filter on that risk factor.
Yeah, when to pull back, when
they're gamblers.
Yeah.
And
it's
so
different. That's completely different. And then when you lose one time, guess what? You're not gambling anymore because you've been smacked hard and you're not going to.
Or you went up
again.
And you said, gosh, you know what? I could have taken some chips off the table and either reinvested into X or diversified. And I do think that's the part that can be trainable. So to me, it's like, hey, if you are predisposed to having this entrepreneurial trait, spend the bulk of your time learning, reading, studying, interviewing others that have been before you. Like those lessons are the most valuable because they're going to help hone your skill. That's a craft. So being an entrepreneur isn't some lucky DNA lottery thing. It's not. Being born in the United States, that's lucky lottery zip code deal. You just were born here. But what you do after that is like, it's a craft. Can you hone the craft? The guys who are the best entrepreneurs in the world, when you talk to them, and you've probably talked to a bunch, they don't go like, oh my gosh, it literally was like winning the lottery. They're like, no, I just made these series of decisions. And this is a pilot for sure. Almost every crash that's been documented is because of a series of bad decisions, not one bad decision.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I look at entrepreneurialism, and I use being a pilot. I went through the training to do that because I was fascinated by how do you minimize the number of bad decisions? I mean, I love the idea of flying. That's true. But the training for that is always about checking and coming back and checking and coming back and having what happens when this happens, follow the plan. Well, you don't know the plan well enough, come back and study the plan, right? So engines out. Anyway.
This is funny you're saying this story, right? So like I used to be a flight instructor. And so, I could teachers, good instructor taught me, and I used to fly these twin engine airplanes, right? That's what I teach out of. I have a ton of time, right? And so one of the things I was taught, is like, instead of just you can't just memorize something like, okay, here's a checklist, go through it, like we taught like, instantaneous, like you need to know where to go right away, right? So when she hits the fan, you don't have time to look at a piece of paper, right? Sorry, that's right. Especially when you're going through 200 miles.
Know your acronyms.
And so like I took off one. Here's my story. This is a good story. We went to freaking Texas, right? To pick up an airplane, right? It was me, 2 other pilots, and a mechanic, right? And so they pull out this plane. It was covered in bird shit, right? And I was like, oh God. And they're like, oh, you got to fly that back to Phoenix. Like, I mean, this is covered, right? And like, oh, we got a good deal on it. And I'm like, what the F? And so I'm like, okay. So the mechanic checks it out and he's like, oh, it's fine. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, fine. Okay. So we get this big piece of shit, right? There's like no paint on it. There's bird shit everywhere. And so we're in the middle, and I think we're in Amarillo. We're not even in Amarillo. We're like North Amarillo, in the middle of nowhere. Okay. It's an airport with a hangar. So we go take off. The mics don't work. The headsets don't work. We go run up the engines. They're working fine. All right. Now I got to fly back to Phoenix. So my friends take off first. Okay. Friends take off first in the good plane, right? They take off first. I'm with the mechanic. We take off. Okay. And so like when you're trained, you do it so many times. And when you teach other people, you learn like it just comes.
Yeah. It's the best of the best for sure.
So here I am sitting, right? For full power. We're going down the runway and I'm doing my scan, right? I'm in a twin, right? So we're hauling ass. And so I look, and all of a sudden I lift off, I rotate, and I lift off, and I'm still doing my scan, right? Because you can't see nothing. You're checking your scan, your engines. And all of a sudden I see the oil pressure go boom and go to 0. And I was like, and I looked at it and I was like, wait. Like I had never seen that, right? And I was like, what? And so then I turn over and look up my left window and the whole back of the wing's covered in oil. And I was like, because like, what do you do, right? Like, I mean, because look, I was only like 200. I couldn't. I was like 250 feet off the ground, right? On one engine, on an airplane. There's like, we used to call these planes like a flying potato. It had like no aerodynamics, right? So I was like, I'm gonna die, right? Like I don't even know. I'm in the middle of nowhere. But it's like what you're saying. It's like what you instinctually. It's like, okay, I trained myself over and over. I taught other people. It was like. And I visually remember this moment. And the mechanic's like this. It's like, cut the engine, right? Because you don't want to blow the engine. And I was like, so, then all of a sudden it's like, there's a split second where you're about to panic, right? And then all of a sudden you get this calm over you. And you're like, your brain literally goes into automatic mode. And it's like, I started just doing like, dead foot, dead engine. Which engine am I going to pull? Because you pull the wrong engine, you're going nose first on the ground. Yeah. Like, all this. And, I feather the props and I come back. And I could believe it was the grace of God. I swear to God, because that plane should have fallen out of the sky. But somehow I was able to like gain altitude on one engine, which I don't know how I did that, a little bit, enough for like a turn. And I was able to like mercy land it. And then I was like, holy crap, that just happened. And, and so it's the same thing you're saying before. It's like, you just have to, you can train for that moment to make a decision, but it doesn't just come, right? Like, so some people, because at that moment in time, same thing with business, if you start to panic or you do the wrong decision, well, you're done, right? Like, so 100%. I 100% agree though. It's like, you can't teach that skill. Like, you have the gene, but until you start using that gene in your body or whatever you want to call it, that's when you really start to like, it's like a muscle, I guess, right? In a way.
Yeah. And I think if you spent time interviewing pro athletes, right, being around them, I can tell you that the overused term being in the zone, I could take out the word airplane and put in game. And that's what guys would talk about when they're in the zone. Like they train so hard that it just becomes like, I don't even know how I did this. I was just doing this stuff Time slowed down for me. I was able to XYZ. That's what the zone is about. The zone is not an accident. The zone is not like, holy crap, I was just entered the matrix and I was dodging all the bullets. Like, no, it's actually fantastic movie, by the way.
It's so good.
No, but it goes to what you're talking about, right? The pilots that do survive stuff like that by the grace of God is also because
like
you
Sully,
focused
right?
on the
Same
training.
thing. Yeah. It's like you train for that moment, but it's like a muscle, right? You're always working.
He didn't tell you like, I was going to flip this switch or this switch. I flipped the coin and I picked the right one. He didn't know. It was like, there was a series of things that kept them alive instead of where we started this part of the conversation. Instead of a series of things that led to a plane going nose first, there were a series of things that you did from dead engine, dead foot, focus on this. Which end am I doing? Okay, I know it's right end. You know, you have to
and you're telling yourself because you don't have time to make the wrong decision.
That's
like,
right.
I mean, it's like the thing with dead foot, dead engine. It's like, that just tells you because, you know, you have all these controls in front of you. If you just if you make the wrong decision, you're done. Right. Yeah. So it's almost like, but I taught dead foot, dead engine so many times. And the moment it really mattered is when it like mattered. Right. Like,
yeah.
And I
100%.
Well, you think about Tiger Woods, right? Like when he's in the zone, that's what he's always talking about that. You know, how did he do that? He had all this crap going on in his life because he was just in the moment. Like he just is that locked in that I don't know.
Steph Curry, right? I was just listening to a podcast on Effortless and Steph Curry. It's very documented the amount of time. I mean, he was an undersized pick in the NBA. He was undersized and didn't get offered his first college scholarship to play where his dad played. So there was a lot of the game that was telling him, like, honestly, dude, you're just not good enough. You're not big enough. You're not strong enough to be at the collegiate level and then not at the professional level. So what did he do? He went and trained his mind. The thing is like, that's a common equation. And his ability to do things like bounce a tennis ball and then a basketball, switch them over, hold one while doing the other, throw it against the wall while still, he's training his mind to do things that when it became game time, his ability to move the ball around without thinking about it was unlike other people. Yeah, he could shoot the three, change the game, all of that. But he didn't get in those spots by accident, by being bigger, stronger. He was smarter and he trained that part of his game, which was his brain.
You think that's what helped you? Like, because, you know, by being an athlete, you know, and getting into the zone and like training, you started, you know, you learned stuff in your mind and then you use that information, even though at the time you probably didn't realize that like, this would help you later on, right? Like think about with the soccer, you know, the facility, right? Like you were learning through osmosis and like, you know, like you're in the moment. And then when you actually were, you know, had ideas, you could execute them because you're like, oh, I don't know what to do.
I use it I'm very unapologetic about using what I learned in sports into business because for me personally, and I can't speak for anybody else, is a direct 100% correlation across the board from how I prepared for games to how I journaled after the games. Why did I watch film? What was I taking from film? When I interview people, I interview literally every person that we hire in our company. I did it for ProtectCELL, even at 125 employees. It's from our call center people to the next, the guy who took my job as CEO. I think it's a really important part to say, this is who we are, this who makes us what we are. And I can't tell you how many really qualified people that I've interviewed that call us back and say, hey, thanks, but no thanks. That just does not sound like the right environment for me. I want it to feel like a locker room, not the F this and F that locker room talk side. I want the prep. I want the post-mortem. I want the, what did we learn when we lost? I'm not going to win every time. We're going to get our asses kicked sometimes. You know, sometimes we're going to be really prepared and still lose. And sometimes we're going to be ill prepared and win. Let's not pound our fists on our chest. So I want people who understand that part of the journey. And I don't care if you're on the robotics.
And a lot of people don't understand that part of the journey, right? They get lucky, right? A lot of brands.
I've got two guys that worked for us that were in the marching band that like were told they weren't athletes. Like, tell me about your commitment to get ready for a high school football game. 6 hours before, recap on Sunday, literally watching film about their formation. It's still the same, right? It's still competitive. It's still understanding discipline, applying those things. So yeah, I think I can't speak enough about how I think it's 100%, right? If someone just says, well, I got an A when I went to Harvard, but I never understood anything about a team dynamic or playing competitively in sport, this is probably the wrong spot for you. Right?
Well, that's the thing too. I found in the last couple of years, it's like a lot of brands get lucky in the beginning, right? Like they had a good idea, whatever, going viral, whatever it might be, right? So they're used to winning, right? And then all of a sudden they're taking competition or, what they're doing is not so novel. So someone else does the same thing and just paints it different color, whatever. And they freak out, right? Because they think like, well, that's not fair. Well, it's like, that's life, dude. Like, I don't tell you. Or I talk to a lot of brands. I'm like, oh, did you trademark that? Well, no. I'm like, did you like get a patent on that idea? I mean, it's a lot more expensive. No, I mean, trademark is cheap. Like, why would you not trademark your freaking logo? Like, I don't know.
I know.
And it's almost like, because I mean, just with my job, I've seen the opposite side of that when someone tries to, copy or take it or whatever it might be. So it's just interesting that like, people don't know how to act or react to the situation because they just got lucky, right? They did get lucky. They were successful right off the bat, and then they have to go through that post-mortem and be like, why is this? Trust me, it's the worst feeling in the world. Like you start like a brand and you have nothing but problems, right? Or like you just feel like you're spinning your wheels. It feels like shit. It really does, right? So you have a choice: you either quit or you keep on trying to figure out what works. But that learning in that phase is the best lessons you can learn, right? So like all your failures.
Yeah, I think it's both. And a year from now, you and I are going to be talking about, whether it's over a beer or on another podcast, how many companies didn't see this coming. So, we're in the golf industry, and both you and I, all the boats have risen with this tide, without a doubt. Probably the greatest rise golf has seen since maybe the late 60s.
Ever. Yeah, like seriously. Yeah.
So in our lifetime as professionals, I certainly wasn't a professional in the late 60s. This is my biggest notice of gain. It rivals soccer's growth after the 1994 World Cup was here. Well, what happened to soccer? It settled back in. Well, guess what? The tide is going to go back out. We do know history will repeat itself. And a lot of this surge right now is going to fall off. You've probably spent time with these guys. I certainly have as peers, of how many of them are not doing any post-mortem based on their success. So we do it sometimes with our failures. Like, God, what the hell happened? Can't let that happen again. My staff was a little bit frustrated when we're doing a post-mortem on why we've been successful to grow 30% year over year in a 25-year-old company. That never happens.
Yeah.
Well, part of it is COVID induced. So if we start believing and eating our own dog food,
that we're amazing. That's
it. And we're like, oh, V1's the greatest thing in the world. It's like, let's understand the leverage points that we use to get where we are. And then let's safeguard some growth, right? To reapportion what's coming. Let's be fortune tellers for a little while because we can see it. So let's spend time doing that instead of patting ourselves on the back and talking about how great we are and how inventive we are. I love all those things about us, don't get me wrong. But I do think if time tells us anything, is that this will settle in. And those that are suddenly like, oh crap, the tide went out. It's like, yeah, but it happens twice a day, like every day.
Like you knew it was going to happen. Well, that's like the thing with the real estate market, right? Like I lived through the last shitty one, right? And so right now, like prices in Arizona have gone to the roof. Like seriously, it's insanity. Everywhere. It's insanity right now. Like, I mean, when I was in real estate, right? So like when I was in real estate 15 years ago, whatever it was, 12 years ago, and like it was the bubble, the last bubble. Like I'm not saying right now is a bubble or not. I'm not even going to get in that conversation. But like, I'm gun shy. I really am, because people are like, oh, you should buy you should buy real estate right now. Hell no, I'm not going to buy real estate right now. Are you kidding me? Like, dude, like in Arizona, houses are selling for 60, 70,000 more than asking. I'm like, where is that coming from? Right? Like, that's not normal. Yeah. Like, oh, there's no houses in Arizona. I'm like, yeah, there is. It just, it's complete insanity. Yeah. So it's like, why is there insanity? Right. And so it's like, is that really a bubble or not? I don't really know. But it's like, you can't think your desert days are always going to last like that. It took 12 years.
And again, you'd say, okay, so what is similar? The stock market's pretty damn similar to the real estate market, but most people don't have experience in both. And you'd say, whether you use the term bubble, overvalued, whatever it is, I've yet to meet anybody, even if they're a complete novice at investing, that says, you know what I'd rather do? I'd rather buy high and sell low.
Yeah.
Right. So you go, what do you think the plan is in the stock market? It's dollar cost average, buy low, sell high. Okay. Everybody knows that. It's easy. Why would we think the real estate market is any different? Because it's hot. And what happens in the stock market? It starts going up, and then everybody has FOMO that doesn't stay disciplined.
Right now, buying. That's what it feels like right now.
Instead of saying, okay, this is a time to take a breather, build up some cash reserves, right? Again, I know it's not the impetus of this podcast, but
no,
the real estate market is the same as is our business. Like this is the time for us as a business to talk about reinvestment.
Yeah.
Not
and reinvesting in the brand and parking cash. Like
that's why we raised capital, is we're fortifying, our partners are in the group of investors, some of them, literally the most successful investors on the face of this planet. They too are understanding that the tide is going to go out. So when I tell them, look, of the majority of some of the money that we've raised, I'm just telling you that a portion of that we are literally putting in a no growth rainy day fund for when this tide settles in.
It doesn't really affect you guys. You're just like,
not a single one of them has said, I don't want to invest. What they actually say is, I actually like your leadership. I think I'd like to invest and have some confidence that, number one, you're there babysitting your own money. That feels pretty damn good. I'm not just here babysitting an idea. And I'm not one of those, to your point earlier, I'm not one of these rotating CEOs who goes from company to company. Like I'm here with my physical investment.
It's your investment. It's not like you're just getting paid a paycheck. This is like,
that's right.
Your money is just as much as tied up as theirs. So it's like,
and I'm not the highest paid person in the company, like not even close. So that's the other thing is like, I know where my value is. It's long-term gain. The people I need to hire that are really like, we got to get them on right now. They should be making more than me.
So this is what I find is interesting. Like you're just talking about this. Like I feel that with like Golfers Authority brand, like I literally have, I mean, I like to be full of shit, but I feel like I have my finger on the pulse, right? Because literally I see the traffic, right? So that tells me I'm not at a golf course, I'm not doing rounds played, but I can tell you if people are buying product because I can see are people searching for the product, right?
That's right.
And so like I won't really know until probably September, October, whether or not the tide's starting to go out. I'll know because I know where it peaked out at last year, and I can be like, oh look, we're below. Now right now I'm not below where I was a year ago. But it's like, it's gonna be, I can look back at that data and be like, okay, because we know it, people can look at Google Trends. There's a website called Google Trends, and you can see like, search volume, whatever. That's different. But when I'm actually seeing people come to a website because they're searching for the product, it's like, okay, people are still out there buying. So, one thing I've noticed too is a lot of new brands popping up, a ton of new brands, just ton. And it's like, but they're all doing the same thing. So it's like, that's kind of been played out.
There's no room when the tide goes out. So there, again, it's whether it's new product or new investment, going into the market, going into real estate or going into golf, we're no different. Golf is no different than the stock market or than real estate. It's hot. People want to be there and they're going to throw money at it. The real question is, do you have a plan for what happens next? And that's where the enduring brands will, right? To your point, am I looking at the data that has no emotion? It never lies and it always tells a story. We know that's true about math. So if that's true, and it's, by the way, very true in real estate, if I take emotion out of this,
the data tells you everything.
So we just have to be there and want to take it in. And it's not sexy. A lot of times it's not fun. It's a little mucky, but at the end of the day, it won't be, entrepreneurship does take some gut. I'm not saying that it doesn't, right? It does go back to that DNA we talked about. But if that's all I rely on, I am flipping coins a little bit. If I look at the data and say, here's what it says, and we're already starting to see X, Y, Z, and what's our plan? No guarantees, but we're hedging our bet.
In the golf industry, I was telling you, you probably already knows, but for the listeners, supposedly, which I think is kind of bullshit, but it might be real. Like there is a huge shortage still of product because of all the delays, like physical, tangible product. Brands have told me that. Then I'm like, bullshit. It's not as much. I think you're trying to squeeze as much money as you possibly can right now, right? So it's almost like supply and demand. Now, I know a year ago, there was no golf balls. I know that for a fact, right? Like you couldn't get a ball if you like.
Well, there's a shortage for sure. I mean, we're seeing it on the clothing side, right? So whether it's just import, what the transportation system is under right now, there is a shortage. My question would be in a business, and golf's not unique to this. You could add baseball, you could add soccer, you can add any activity, skiing, wakeboarding. It's a physical, tactile sport. Right? We try a new driver at the driving range, and the guy goes, man, you're going to hit the new Titleist XYZ. You go, awesome. Unfortunately, it's on back order and doesn't get here for 11 weeks. I liked it anyway. I'm going to do it. That happens one time. I'm telling you, it will happen one time. The next time I go back for a new set of irons and he goes, by the way, that's going to be another 12 weeks. I go, I'm out. What were last year's models? Oh, good. I'll just take one of those.
Yeah, we got a million of those over there and they're half the price.
There you go. It's like a half truth, right? That there is truth to the delays. I'm not saying they're secretly stocking them out in Nevada.
There was. I just think, but delays in June of 21. There was delays in September of 20. I can tell you that. But correct. 20, come on, I'm gonna call them bullshit. There probably is some kind of delay, a little bit here and there. you're just trying to squeeze as much profit as you can off of it. Just be honest. Like, tell me the truth. Like, I'm gonna find out anyway. So like, I don't know. I think it's a lawyer. Whatever, dude. So yeah, see, this is what happens. You go on these. I've talked to some really smart people. Like just like the CEO of golfballs.com. Right. Like he's an OG. I call him an OG because he was like one of the very first golf e-com sites, right? Like the CEO of Global Value Commerce, which is Global Golf, all of his brands, right?
Yep.
Brilliant men, right? And it's just like, I love this stuff because this is stuff I love because I feel like they don't teach us in school. Like if you want to learn how to run, if you want to start a golf brand, listen to this podcast because every one of these people are going to tell you what to do and what not to do and how to learn how to do it. And then really listen to the words they're saying and say like, okay, well, how can I learn that? Whatever. Right. Like,
that's right.
So, I mean, that's why I appreciate you being on the show. I know you have another brand too. We can talk about that. I think you should come back, talk about Galway. That'd be cool.
Done. Love it.
Like, this is more of an entrepreneurial podcast than is anything. Like, I don't ever like let people like, sometimes people want to come on the show to like talk about their brand. And I'm like, who? What? No, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not an advertising company. I'm just a guy talking about stuff. So
behind the brand, right? I mean, at the end of the day, there is or is not something behind the brand. And you've seen plenty that there actually isn't that much other than maybe some money behind the brand. And then
I can tell you who those people are. I can tell you off air.
To the guys,
I can tell you who doesn't have a damn clue what they're doing, but they have a lot of money behind it. So it's like they think
to the guys you referenced before, there is something behind that brand and there is something to that company and there's something worth listening and gleaning from the words of wisdom those guys have. And that's the important stuff because you don't learn it in school. And if you pay close enough attention, that's why I say, like, you got to get your hands in the dough and get it a little bit. That's where
learn from somebody. Like for me, like one thing I've always has helped me is I've had mentors, right? And like, if you want to accelerate your growth, I've always been ballsy, right? So like, here's another story for everybody. So like I started doing this. I was doing it for 6 months. I was all proud of my website. I started getting some traffic, whatever. And then I'm in a small Facebook group, right, of people. And so it was a course. I learned how to do stuff. And so one of the guys is in San Diego, right? So I saw him and I was like, hey man, and he has a website, but it's not golf, right? So I'm like, hey, I'm coming to San Diego. I'd like to meet you. Here's a story for everybody. This is about and mentors, okay, and acceleration of growth.
Yep.
So I'm like, hey, I'd like to meet you. He's like, I see you live in San Diego. I'm going to Coronado, my family. He's like, oh yeah, for sure. I'll meet with you. And I was like, well, surprised because he's a big time YouTuber, right? I was like, oh, that's cool. And so we go, this is like 6 months in my brand, right? I go to him. We have a coffee or lunch. We had like coffee, his coffee shop by his house. And he lives over by Balboa Park. And so what's the name of that town over there? Anyways, so
Hilltop or something like that.
Yeah, it's like just the north side. It's called, is it Hilltop? It's like, if here's Balboa Park, it's like right here. It's like 3 blocks away, 4 blocks away, right? I love this. Anyways, I love San Diego. I live there in a heartbeat. So we have coffee, right? And he goes, and I'm so excited. I bring my laptop and I show him my website. And you know what he says? He goes, dude, no offense, man. Your site looks like shit. That's what he literally tells me. I was like floored, right? Because I was not expecting that. I was all proud of it. And he's like, and then for the next 3 hours, he just ripped it apart. Told me all this stuff, this and 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 this. And I was like I walked out quiet because my mind was blown, right? And so I get back to the hotel, Coronado, and I text them like, hey, thanks for coffee, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, first of all, I'm like, if someone's willing to tell you all things that are wrong with your stuff, that means they care enough to tell you that, right?
That's exactly right.
That's it. Like, it's not like you gotta have, it's not like, I have to have thick skin. It's like someone's really mentoring you, telling you what's wrong with your stuff, right? Like no one ever does that for free. So I go, hey, would you be my mentor? And he texts me back. He's like, no. He's like, I'm really busy. He's like, let me think about it. And then like 5 minutes later, he texts me back. He's like, yeah, I'll do it. Dude, that's what accelerated my growth. Like out of everything else, because I could just bounce things off of him. And this dude's making crazy money, right? But I'm able to go to him and say, what am I doing wrong, right? And he's like, don't do that. That's stupid, right? Or don't. It's not so much the website anymore. It's more about, and he's not even like a bit, like he's younger than I am. It's just like he's figured it out, right? And like, I mean, he has over 1 million subs on YouTube And I mean, he's crushing it. He's bought a warehouse in San Diego for what he's doing. It's like he's mid-30s, right? But it's like, the thing is, the mentor is the key to, I feel like, if you want to accelerate your growth as an entrepreneur, you got to have a mentor of some sort.
Yeah. I mean, show me any successful person in history. That's a bold statement because I don't actually know the answer to this. So I probably shouldn't say it that way, but my challenge will be, show me any successful person in history that didn't have someone that they worked with or under, whether it's a coach, a mentor, a compadre. I mean, think about the guys that
a soldier.
Think about the guys that Edison was surrounded with. Think about the guys that great players had for coaches. They won't tell you it was the guy with the best X's and O's. Right? I'm reading a great book by John Gordon. The game is won in the locker room. Like, it is so true. At the end of the day, stuff happens on the field. What are you going to do when you get punched in the nose? You change your plan. I get all that. But if you aren't prepared, right, whether you're flying a plane or running a company or playing in a game, if you're not there prepared, and who helps you prepare? Someone who's been there before you. A bunch of players don't sit in the locker room and go, hey, what do you guys want to do today? What do you want to do for practice today? No, the coach has been there. Coaches aren't typically younger with zero experience above players. They may not have played at the same level, but they've been around coaching. That's what they do. Mentors, the guy has 1 million viewers plus. If he had 10, he wouldn't be able to give you good advice. When he's got 1 million, he can say, look, I've seen this before. And if you're willing to take a little...
Well, it's like you with your businesses, right? Like, you've seen it, right? It doesn't matter what it is. They're all different. They're all different, industries, but you've seen...
But I learn. I'm surrounded by great guys and
smarter
really
guys
than
you.
They're pouring into my life. Like, I'm 53. I've got 4 guys who are my mentors that 100% pour into my life. Do I owe that gratitude? I'm mentoring 7 guys because I feel a gratitude to the 4 guys that took time out of their lives, away from their families, away from their personal time, to pour into me in a sort of spirit of pay it forward. Like, I owe that debt for sure. Like, I get more out of it when I'm mentoring somebody. Like you said, when you're flying the plane and instructing,
growing,
you learn. Yeah,
it's like you. So, you grow, and you're like,
I get way more out of it than I'm sure the guys who are my mentoring 100%. Are probably like, but yeah, it's awesome, man. So yeah, I think having that relationship that's
like a booster. I always feel like having a mentor in entrepreneurship is like the boost. Is a boost that helps. So I'm just saying, if you ever find somebody out there, you're like, I really want to do X, then go talk to them, right? Or try to.
Yeah. And even if they don't have time, you probably run into this too. Sometimes people are just like, hey, my book is full, man. I just do not have any more time. But this person might be able to help you because they might have time. Like, you'd just be really pleasantly surprised at how many times I'll get a call. Can you help this guy just one time? Of course I will, because I know I'm helping the person who just referred that.
It happens all the time. It happens all the time. I get that all the time.
Yeah.
Or I'm in these email chains, and it's like, I was telling my wife this. My wife could care less, right? But I'm like, hey, I'm in like this email with like 5 very successful golf brands. But I'm friends with all of them. And I'm like, but there's a 6th guy. I don't know who that guy was, And then, so I just sent him an email like, hey, we run in the same circles. Let's talk, and now we're friends. And now he owns a big clothing brand, right? So it's just funny because like everyone knows each other, because they all kind of
the good guys do.
Yeah. The assholes, they will like that gets, I can tell you, I have a whole short list of assholes.
In sports and business, it is the greatest filter because it is brutally honest, right? That's the one thing I do love about it is you cannot be an a-hole without being figured out quick. You can't like fake it until you make it. If you're an asshole, you're not going to be around long. I'm just sorry, you're not. Like, you're not going to be a good teammate. You're not going to be good in a peer network. You're not going to be good like when we're just having a beer talking about business. Hey, can you help me out? The guys that are
I'm not going to help you. Sorry.
Because you don't have time. There's too many good people to get excited about doing what they're doing. And that's why the network is cool and small, right? And
it's not like that's organic. That's not like it's,
totally.
You can't go into it and be like, hey, I want to be your friend. That's weird, right? It's almost like you got to just.
Yeah, somebody
I went to the PGA show last year, and I like my buddy Sam, who owns Minimal Golf. We became friends at the show. Like, he's on my podcast, one of my very first episodes. Like, he's a really innovative golf bag. It's like the most coolest golf bag ever. So anyways,
exactly. I've seen it. It's very cool.
I'm surprised you don't work with him because he is like Sam Golden School of Golf in California. But anyways, you probably do actually. But you just hit off with people, it's really weird. And then once you hit it off, you're like, oh, cool. We're like twinsies. And I never even knew who you were 5 minutes ago.
Exactly.
Anyways, I'll get off my soapbox now.
It's a good one to be on.
No, it's not. It's not a good one. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show. I know that you're a busy man, so thank you. I will definitely want you to have you back to talk about Galway. I think it'd be fun to talk about that, how you kind of got into that. So that's a whole other area of golf.
Yeah, clothing, and I'll probably learn more from you than I know.
Right. I know jack shit. Like
it's exciting. Like it's a technical fabric, and there's something to be said about not just doing the same shit that's out there with everybody and being another Me Too brand.
We need to have a separate. We need to have a call and Zoom meet. Like seriously, I could tell you. Like I've worked with a lot of clothing brands. I can tell you. Like I can say like, oh yeah, there's Lucky, right? And then they did the hot shit, and then I could be like, no, they actually have something really cool and they're really nice people. But yeah,
we'll definitely have that call.
Apparel's hard. Apparel's so freaking hard. That is like the hardest. I'm sorry.
I run a multi-million-dollar sports facility that I think is hard, which isn't. Running a freaking clothing brand is freaking hard.
It's so hard. I had no idea. I had zero idea when I started doing it. And I was like, holy shit, this is harder than I thought. Like way harder.
But it's cool, man. It's cool. The juice is worth the squeeze for sure.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah. The margins on apparel is ridiculous. I'm just telling you guys.
Yeah.
But it's so hard. That's why it's so hard, because you have so many people out there trying to do the same thing. And it's also fatty too. That's the hard part. Like it's trends. So it's like, oh, that's cool. And then next year, you're seeing this a lot with like the colored shirts, right? Like Bad Birdie kind of were the first ones, and they do a phenomenal job. And then now there's like probably 100 other little brands trying to do the same damn thing. It's like,
and even big brands that are following the little brands, right?
Yeah, but they're like 2 years behind, dude. Have you noticed that?
They're still doing it.
It's so annoying. I don't want to. I'll talk shit after the show to you. I could tell you like all kinds of people that do that, and I'm just like, it's so disappointing, because when you're like, that's not even cool. It's like, oh, that's an original idea. I'm like, that was cool like 5 years ago. But it's like they all have money, right? So they can make it. They can get it in the stores and they can do whatever. And people still think that's cool because it's everywhere. That's not cool,
right?
But anyways, thank you for being on the show today. No, you have to take off and have some lunch because you're 3 hours ahead of me. And then you're gonna go work on your tan some more. You're nice and tan.
Hopefully out on a golf course somewhere, man, or fishing on a boat.
It rains in Michigan, because it always freaking rains in Michigan. But
thanks for having me
my new
on.
friend.
I really appreciate
Brian's my new friend, everybody. So that's cool.
Yeah, vice versa. This is gonna be great.
But thanks for being on the show. I'll have you on for the Galway. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Behind the Golf Brand Podcast.
You're going to beat me at golf?
Stay connected on and off the show by visiting golfersauthority.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment.
Golf is always more fun when you win.
Stay out of the beach and see you on the green.